So what's up with the twin flame age gap? It's a thing. And usually what you're going to get is a female who is 10 or more years older than the male twin flame runner, right? That's ordinarily what you're going to get. You watching, your situation might be a little bit different. I'll try to address that too. But it's a thing, and it's just kind of a curious thing. Most people who are the chaser, so-called chaser, it's not really based on like actions like running and chasing. That's kind of a myth with twin flames. But outwardly, it usually looks that way, all right? So usually the chaser, so-called, is a woman who is at least 10 years older than the so-called runner, male twin flame. Why? It's so weird. Like, why is it? And guys, it's a lot too. Okay, so I'm the leading twin flame coach. I'm the world's #1 twin flame coach. The reason I can say that is because I've coached over 3,500 students. I've caused more unions than any other coach on the planet. My twin flame, of course, is permanently in my life. And I'm not saying that to brag. Here's why I'm saying that. I've got a bunch of data. So I can tell you it's a thing. Okay, and I mean, just looking at the stats on my YouTube channel, it's over 90% female. And just in working with my students on a daily basis, I can tell you that the age gap is a thing. The so-called chaser is always 10 or more years older than the so-called runner. My twin flame is 11 years younger than me. Okay, and in my case, I'm one of the exceptions because I'm a man and my twin flame is a woman. Usually the genders are the other way around. Usually the so-called feminine is the woman. And so that's reversed for me. But what is the same is the age gap. So it's a thing. I just wanted to take the first couple of minutes of this video to establish that it's a thing. Now, it's not always a thing. And you watching, you very well could be a man whose twin flame is a man, or a woman whose twin flame is a woman. There's exceptions. It's not 100%, but even if you're one of the exceptions, it's still kind of curious, like, yeah, why is it like that? Like, what's up with the age difference? Why is it almost always a woman? And here's the thing. Here's the answer. Here's the most correct answer anybody's got for this twin flame age gap thing. Nobody really knows, guys. Anybody that tells you they have the answer for sure, they don't know. Nobody knows the for sure answer. All we can do is speculate. Now, what I can do, being that I've got more experience, I'm the most experienced twin flame coach, I've got more students than anybody else by far, is I can tell you what I think it is. I can offer some theories. The mind isn't going to like the answer I give you because it's not a concrete answer. What the ego wants is a concrete answer. This is why it is, and we know for sure that's why it is. Nobody really knows, but we can speculate. So I'm going to attempt to do that on this video. And this also, the speculation that I have for you, may actually explain why there are exceptions too. And with the gender part of this, where most of the time the so-called divine feminine is actually a woman, I'm an exception. So that's another thing too, that this speculation may actually assist in, explaining why it is like this. But again, it is just a speculation. I don't think anybody really knows the answer. Maybe someday we will know the answer. And me, in my position as a scientific researcher of twin flames, maybe I'm someone who's going to be able to figure it out. But here's what I think it is. I don't know for sure. Nobody knows for sure, but here's what I think it is. And again, the ego isn't going to like this answer. Okay, but here it goes. The universe is infinitely intelligent. Okay, this is your soul's journey, right? Everybody knows that you and your twin flame are the same soul, right? So your soul has already got this all figured out. And the soul stands above the mind. The soul is higher than, more evolved than the mind, ego, personality, right? Those are 3 words to kind of describe the same thing. Everybody knows that your body, mind, soul. Okay, so the mind, ego, personality, the soul comes before the mind, ego, personality, right? The soul is who you really are. Okay, you are a soul, which is your twin flame, by the way. You guys are the same soul. But you have a mind. You have an ego and you have a body. And I'm not just mincing my words. I'm not just playing around with the meaning of the words. This really matters. And the sooner that you get this energetically, you can't really understand it. It's energetic with your twin flame because it's a journey of consciousness. It's a spiritual journey, not a journey of the mind. It's a journey of the soul, not a journey of the mind. But once you kind of get this energetically, that might actually make more sense to you, that the soul is above the mind. It's above ego. So whatever triggers you were meant to have in this lifetime, the soul has it all figured out. And there's certain stereotypes in our society that we're all susceptible to. And one of them could very well be, for example, here's some hot young guy that you really like and you really feel attracted to because they are you. And to make matters worse, there's just a really powerful physical attraction. That's just speculation, guys. I don't know if that's what it is, okay? But it just seems plausible. And maybe you could offer some of your own speculation in the comments section down below. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just trying to speculate here. But what I do know is that this is your soul's journey. And the soul is always above the mind. It's always more evolved than, greater than, ahead of. It precedes the mind. It's who you really are. You are the soul. You have a mind. So the soul, because it stands above the mind, it's going to be able to set up the conditions of your life experience and your life situation to cause greater and greater triggers. And those triggers are very important. And I know it's hard for you to maybe understand right now, but what I can tell you from experience and with my over 3,000 students is it gets better, guys. It gets better. And you're actually going to look back at the dark night of the soul and all the triggers that this person puts you through, and you might actually appreciate them someday, okay? And that's the thing with twin flames. It's not meant to be an endless supply, an endless cycle of pain and suffering. At some point, you do wake up. You do wake up through the suffering. And this is even a traditional Zen spiritualism conversation. Like, why is suffering such a great teacher? You see it in all the great spiritual teachings of traditional Zen spiritualism. And that's all this is. The twin flame journey is really just the true spiritual journey. And if you look at traditional Zen spiritualism, Buddhism, the Tao, any of these, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, they're always going to have a lesson to teach you that can be learned through suffering. And to the mind, that sounds kind of sick. But as long as you learn, look at Eckhart Tolle, okay? The guy suffered from depression and anxiety, and his whole world came crashing down, and it just pushed him over the edge. And that's what caused him to wake up. They call it ego death. Okay, it's when your ego breaks down and melts away. You and I in the so-called twin flame community, we call that dark night of the soul. It's kind of the same thing, right? And he didn't even meet his twin flame, Eckhart Tolle. It was just his life circumstances that caused his dark night of the soul. Well, for some reason, suffering is an amazing teacher, but with your twin flame, at some point you should learn the lessons. You should benefit from the breakdown of those old patterns, of all that conditioning, all those expectations that you place on the person. They all start to melt away, and you're left with just seeing who you are, which is a soul. Now, I just want to add one caveat. If you're somebody who is just continuously for years on end experiences nothing but suffering and perhaps even abuse with this person, they're probably not your twin flame. At some point, you should wake up. Okay, that's a question that I've seen out there on the internet about twin flames. And you'll see people talk about that. Like sometimes people who are just in an abusive relationship, they put the label twin flame on it to justify staying in there. Guys, this is your spiritual awakening. And if that awakening never takes place, it's probably not your twin flame. And that only makes sense because you and your twin flame are one soul. Okay, so your soul is trying to get your attention, which brings me back to my original point, which is that the soul is a lot smarter than your ego. So the soul is going to put into place before you're even born all these things that could trigger you. So here's some person that's younger, they're really good looking. Maybe they're not the kind of person that you usually go for, but for whatever reason, they're just irresistible to you. You're just ridiculously sexually attracted to them. The physical attraction is over the top. I don't know, guys, but you kind of see where I'm going with this, right? You follow me, right? Like, I don't know the exact answer, and I don't think anybody does. But why is that a thing? Why is there the age gap? Well, maybe it's because that's a big trigger for a lot of humans. Like, you see somebody, like you're, 36 and your twin flame is 25, and you're just like, oh my God, this 25-year-old guy wants to hang out with me, and he really seems to like me, and you're like, oh my God, yeah, it's raining men, all right. I don't know, guys. I'm being a little bit silly, but at the same time, I'm just trying to think, like, what could it be? That's just my theory about what it is. But what we do know, again, beyond theory, for sure, the one piece of this that I know I've got to be right about is that your soul is infinitely more intelligent than your ego is. So it's going to set all these circumstances in place for you to make this ego death take place. The ego has to break down in order for the consciousness of your soul to emerge. That's exactly what this is, okay? Now, that would explain why it doesn't happen to everybody. Why isn't it that everybody has an age gap? And sometimes your twin flame, the so-called runner, is older than you. That's certainly been the case for a handful of people. Not the majority. It's over 90%, guys. I can tell you from the data that I've accumulated as a twin flame researcher that it is. It's like almost or over 90%. It's right around 90%. There's the age gap where the so-called masculine is about 10 years or more younger. And it's like that, but there are exceptions. Why is there an exception? Well, maybe the age gap just wasn't needed for your journey. Maybe that just wasn't necessary for you. The setup of the life situation, the life circumstances to trigger your ego into that breakdown, the soul's got it all covered. It's got it all figured out. The soul wants you to awaken. Okay, so I think by now, 12 and a half minutes into this video, I hope you kind of understand where I'm going with this. I feel like some of the things that I'm saying might be controversial because everybody's journey is different, and you might be thinking, I don't know if that's what it is, Kurt. You could be wrong about that, and I could be wrong about that. That's what I'm saying. But what I am saying for sure is the soul has it all figured out, and that's got to be a trigger for people when your twin flame is so much younger than you are. Right? That's got to be. It's got to be a big trigger. Now, again, I would invite you to leave your comments in the comments section below. What do you think it is? Or do you think maybe I'm onto something? Is that a reasonable explanation? I think it is. Why there is this age gap. Also, the soul doesn't really exist in time, so it can incarnate either half of the twin flame soul being into reality at any different given time. But again, that could be useful, right? And if it's going to be a big trigger for your particular ego experience, maybe the age gap is a good idea. If it's not going to matter to you, then it's not. And it just so happens that for most humans, it is a big trigger. And that's why it's like around 90% of the time you get the age gap. That's my theory. I don't know if it's correct, but guys, it's the only one that makes sense. You got to look at this for what it is, guys. And you have to look at what we already know. We know that we're body, mind, soul. We know that you and your twin flame are the same soul. And a spiritual awakening is where you leave behind the mind as your primary method of self-identification. That is a spiritual awakening by definition. That's always been in traditional Zen spiritualism what an awakening is. It's where you don't really believe that you are the personality anymore. You no longer identify with the ego as your sense of self. You don't derive your sense of self from ego anymore. You're going into that higher consciousness. Well, to facilitate that, the ego has to be broken down, okay? And the soul can use any means possible. That's got to be the only good reason why you would do a thing like that. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of the soul only cares about your ascension. It only cares about you increasing your consciousness because that's what the soul is, right? Which is your twin flame, by the way, consciousness. You're the conscious awareness behind the mind, behind the ego, behind thought. Okay, and when you embrace that, by the way, that's when your twin flame shows up. Well, to set that up, to facilitate that breakdown of the ego, we're going to put a whole bunch of triggers in place. And of course, the soul can pull something like that off years ahead of time. The soul exists outside of time. So there you go, guys. That's my theory. I think probably the best one out there, because I'm not really saying specifically why there's the age gap. I have a theory about why there's the age gap, but what we do know for sure is that the soul is in control of all the incarnations that you're experiencing, the circumstances of your life when you incarnate here to begin with, and of the other person's life too. The soul is in control of all of those things, and it has to be related to your awakening. That's the only thing the soul cares about, is your awakening. That's it. So there you go, guys. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. Please feel free to comment your opinions. I'd be really happy to see them. Very curious to see what you've experienced. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.